This is not the Oozaloo show.
There isn't one yet.
No, there isn't. There never will be.
Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Oozaloo Show. So then, let's talk about my favourite way to waste time these days. Everyone's favourite friendly neighbourhood cult. Yeah, I think most people are bored of this shit by now, but hold on a moment. There's more to this than most people know. In the interest of dispelling lies and misconceptions, I'm going to very quickly run through a list of things you should know. If you are new to this issue, you can safely skip this. I am not an SJW, feminist, or aggressive leftist. I have never seriously called AIU racist. I have never claimed to be done with AIU. I am not Platopus. I have never commented on any of AIU's videos and have therefore not been banned as far as I know. This issue is about far more than racism, that simply sparked it. Stating statistics is not racist. None of AIU's main detractors have ever had a problem with him doing so. None of AIU's main detractors are trying to excuse criminals of responsibility. I wear the shades for a good reason. Anyway, enough of that, let's get on with it. Atheism is unstoppable. An assessment I find myself agreeing with. Alas, the man behind the moniker it's a rather different story. This drama kicked off during an episode of Drunken Peasants, a podcast with an intellectual theme, but which is more intended for comedy. A then friend of the hosts, Jacqueline Glenn, attended and brought something with her.
So Jacqueline, some guy made a video about you.
People that are black are often treated unfairly. What? Maybe they should stop dealing with the cops. Maybe they should stop committing crimes.
He says, like, we're not racist, but here he is saying, like, black people just need to stop committing all these fucking crimes, man. Just fucking say that you're racist. I mean, like, I would respect you more if you were just like, hi, I'm racist.
So the amazing atheist called someone a racist. I've written an article which, among other things, explains and justifies this reaction. But I don't think AIU is actually racist. I'll talk about that another time. So what happened next? Well, this is AIU we're talking about. The reaction was petulant, indignant. Suffice to say, he didn't take it very well. The exposure of his failings in tact, civility, and even the most basic of reasoning and logic had made him into a sort of pariah. It seemed then that he just got more and more extreme. There are many vocal opponents of AIU, but the most notable in this case is Canadian Atheist. He ended up being the flag bearer of the argument with AIU over the race issue. The argument always boiled down to the same contention, that there are factors that contribute to a higher crime rate. This seems obvious, doesn't it? But amazingly, AIU consistently evaded giving this answer, and his absolute adherence to the mantra of simply blaming criminals without ever going into the broader causes of crime, combined with the fact that he's so regularly focused on condemning black criminals specifically, led many to believe that he may actually be prejudiced against black people. More evidence to support this hypothesis arose later, and I'll go into that in detail some other time. This conflict wore on for a long time, and all the time it did, AIU seemed to get more and more angry, and that anger seemed to affect his actions more and more. You know what? I think you've earned this. A free tour of the museum of AIU's unethical behaviour. As far as we know, AIU hasn't killed anyone. Yet. Although I'm sure he wishes he could kill me right now. He seems to have no compunction whatsoever in doing whatever it takes to silence any criticism of him. That includes doing everything he can to affect the personal lives of his critics. So, for your delectation, allow me to run through some of the most infamous examples. First, have you ever seen a kangaroo mauled by a cat?
He was zapped by God through the internet.
As I'm sure you can tell, creationist cat is to be regarded with the utmost seriousness. So it's lucky that that's what AIU did. I mean, imagine the mess we'd be in if AIU simply regarded creationist cat as an entertainer. I shudder to think. Shortly after the Drunken Peasants featured AIU, the creationist cat made a joke about him on Twitter. CC, talk us through this.
I suggested to his Patreon patrons that they just give their buddy straight to the KKK because they'd be getting a bigger bang for their buck.
Thanks for stopping by, CC.
Later, Shadamites!
Now this tweet was the start of a brief rivalry between CC and AIU. CC poked fun at AIU occasionally over the course of the next few days. Now since these jokes apparently hurt AIU's feelings, he responded in the way that any mature, rational, sane human being would. What did he do, you ask? Laugh it off like a big boy and go play with some different friends? No. He doxed creationist cat. He published private and identifying information about an individual on the internet. If you think this was okay, you're an apologist on exactly the same level as all the prominent creationists and Islamic scholars, and like many of them, you've taken a stand against self-determination and personal freedoms. Amazingly, there are people that think this way. Let's annihilate their two most common arguments, shall we? The first is as follows.
The information was already out there. We didn't dox him.
Yeah, except that by that definition, nothing can ever be doxing, short of breaking into someone's house, stealing their personal information, then spreading it. If the information's not accessible, then doxing is not possible. Your definition is self-refuting. The second argument they make is as follows.
Why should I take you seriously if you're not going to put your real name behind your words?
That's character assassination, which is a logical fallacy. But even more so, if you don't care what people are saying when they don't have their real name behind their words, then don't listen to them. Their public identity is their prerogative. It's not your choice to make. Or did you forget you were pretending to be a liberal? Whoopsie. Personal freedoms, remember those? He's also doxed 4 other friends of mine, none of whom did anything but criticize him, as well as me myself. That's right, I'm no longer anonymous. It was bound to happen eventually. And of course the culprit was Google+. Who else? I deleted my Google Plus profile months ago, but Google kept a link up. For years I didn't bother trying to keep the Oozaloo identity separate from my real name. If I started again I could easily maintain my anonymity. But until then, shades. Want to hear it straight from the marsupial's mouth? Here goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I love doxing people. Oh, God. The second you cross me, the second you have an ill word, the second you hit the dislike button, I will find your name and I will reveal it to the world. Your name shall be revealed.
Hey, AIU, I found a friend for you. Ready? Randy Harper. SJW extraordinaire, serial doxer, and harasser. Man, you're so SJW it hurts you more than me. You see, it's the same with every cult. As soon as they can't defend their arguments, as soon as they run out of reason, they just become thugs. That's all you are, AIU. And somehow, it gets worse. During production of this video, another doxing attack occurred. It was centered around another critic, who was 14. He's called Logical Liberal, and he's appeared on one of our hangouts. This guy, proof that psychopaths walk among us, released the personal information of an innocent bystander who is apparently one of Logical Liberal's real-life friends, and is also 14 years old. This was part of an attempt to extort the, quote, behaviour of Logical Liberal. It can safely be assumed that this means Logical Liberal's silence in criticising AIU. And before you ask, yes, AIU is involved in this. This was not just the act of one fan, it was a calculated intimidation campaign. But this 14-year-old's got more balls than any of them. And so AIU has now released the docs of a 14-year-old for the heinous crime of criticising him. Although apparently, he actually got it wrong. Whether you believe that's up to you, but the target of the docs, Logical Liberal, claims it's wrong. He doesn't mind this failure being shown uncensored. Important to note that AIU was still very willing to dox a 14-year-old, and may remain believing he has, and it was only his ineptitude that stopped it from being damaging. This time only one of their 2 targets was hit. Next time might be worse. AIU, aka Devon Tracey, is literally going insane. Listen to this and tell me I'm wrong.
Your name is Billy Cannon. Hey, 14-year-old, your name is Billy Cannon. Say one fucking thing about me online. One fucking thing, and you're getting doxxed. Instantly. Try it. Peace the fuck out, everyone. Billy Cannon, suck my balls.
I sincerely worry for those around him. That voice commands the devotion of thousands. Does this guy need a cult? Or a padded cell? Why do they dox people? It's obvious, isn't it? They can't do any better. They're simple-minded, hate-filled psychopaths, lashing out as they see their narcissism isn't compatible with the clear fact that they've done wrong. If they were right, they wouldn't need to do this. Oh, maybe they're just doing it for fun, maybe it's just a joke. Yeah, that would make them sadists as well. Nothing about their behavior redeems them. Do not let this cult manipulate you. You are better than that. Nothing else I can show you measures up to this. This is a whole new level, and yet I must solemnly continue, for there is more, albeit trivial by comparison. This next one is a 2-in-1. The aforementioned Canadian atheist had a conversation with one of AIU's fans. He recorded it and uploaded it to his channel. Legally, the video was his intellectual property, so when AIU took it and uploaded it to his own channel, he was breaking the law. He gave no attribution or credit to the owner of the content. And before you ask, no, it wasn't covered by fair use. He uploaded it to his channel with no modifications, criticisms or commentary. It wasn't transformative. I find this to be unethical, but it's definitely illegal. Now, Canadian Atheist made no excuses for criminals, as AIU would advise. He used the Digital Millennium Copyright Act in an attempt to get the video removed. This placed a strike on AIU's YouTube channel, which conferred some limitations to it, which made AIU very sad. What happened next was definitely unethical and illegal in most places too. Extortion, legally, and what some would call blackmail. AIU made a grand total of 3 distinct threats to the Canadian Atheist, warning that if the strike wasn't removed from his channel, all 3 would be enacted. They were as follows. 1. AIU threatened to flag all of Canadian Atheist's videos. 2. AIU threatened to flood the Google search results for Canadian Atheist's full name with pictures of him which had been creatively edited to include swastikas and other racist symbology. And the 3rd threat was obsession. Don't worry, AIU, I think you have that one covered already. Oh, and by the way, he followed through with 2 of the 3 threats, the 3rd being the least damaging. So now, anytime someone, an employer for example, searches for Canadian Atheist's full name on Google Images, they'll be faced with an incriminating smear campaign. And that's exactly what AIU intended when he did this. Not only does he show no remorse for this, but he's already started doing the same thing to me. Unfortunately for him, it's ineffective for many different reasons. So, do your worst, AIU, as I know your worst is all you've got. Because, you know,
I'm really easy to get along with, most of the time. But I don't like bullies, and I don't like threats, and I don't like you. You can try and stop us from getting to the truth, but I promise you, if you do, I will respond with all the unique technologies at my command.
Like making videos poking fun at you. Yeah, I bet you're quaking in your wee booties now. It's not a threat. It's a sneak preview of what's happening anyway. I just find it so much fun, and I've met some pretty cool people who also find it fun. And rest assured to anyone listening, this is a 2-way procedure. AIU is at least as obsessed with us as we are with him. He's our jester, we're his bane. So expect me to keep this up, for at least as long as he does. Oh, and by the way, the museum tour is not finished yet. Follow me for the next exhibit. AIU's a big fan of flags, so much so that he gives them out to his critics, very generously. He even advocates that his fans do the same thing. Isn't that nice? Alas, there's trouble in paradise. For the flags to which I'm referring are not just pieces of cloth. These flags are effectively requests for YouTube to censor content. The intention of the flagging system is so that videos that break the community guidelines or terms of service that YouTube enforces can be taken down. Therefore, a flag on any video that doesn't break any of these rules should be considered a false flag. False flag attacks are common for people that want to silence their critics on YouTube, and have historically been performed by such exceptionally reputable characters as Brett Keane, and was a common tactic of creationists back in the day to silence atheists. It didn't go too well for them in the end. Now, it's true that a real human at YouTube, supposedly, looks over these flag claims before any action is taken on the video, and so naturally the argument arises that
it's YouTube's responsibility and theirs alone what happens as a result of a flagging attack.
Which relies on the idea that YouTube will always make the right decision, right both in terms of correctness and morality, and that if they make a wrong decision, then the person who caused that decision to have to be made is not responsible in the slightest. To illustrate this problem, let me give you a few analogies.
Analogy number 1.
A person hires a hitman to assassinate someone else. Turns out the hitman's an undercover police officer. Does the person who hired the hitman, or attempted to, have any culpability whatsoever? Legally, yes, and I think also morally. But this analogy isn't perfect. In this case, it's a request to do something, rather than a dishonest report, which naturally leads to actions which are going to be unjustified. So I'll give you another.
Analogy number 2.
A younger sister lies to her older brother, claiming that someone has been mean to her. She hopes that the older brother will take retributive action. Now, if he doesn't believe her, has she done something wrong? What if he does believe her? Then is she responsible, at least in part, for the consequences? Since this analogy has been criticised before, although I don't know why, I'll make the analogy in a slightly different way, which should assuage that criticism.
Analogy number 3.
You dishonest person, you, lie to a police officer about a crime that you claim that someone else has committed. Now, whether he believes you or not, whether there's due process and investigation, and whether or not there ends up being a conviction, filing a false police report is a crime almost everywhere, and I think most would agree it's also immoral. If a video is successfully flagged, some limitations are incurred upon the channel that uploaded it, so ultimately, false flag attacks can lead to the destruction of livelihoods, as there are many who rely on YouTube for their income. Would you forgive someone who got an innocent colleague fired by lying to his boss? This is the kind of callous, desperate contempt for criticism that we're talking about here. Hopefully I've now convinced you that false flagging qualifies as unethical behaviour, and so you know what's coming next. He calls them true flags. So where's your evidence, AIU? He claims he's been slandered. That's debatable, but that's not part of the terms of service, so you can't use it against people. Oh, did your feelings get hurt? Too bad. Maybe he was just joking. Well, his fans don't seem to think so. These are just the best examples. There are many others. Some of them are more subjective, but put it this way, if someone did them in real life, you would lose all respect for that person. There are many more actions I don't consider unethical on their own, which nonetheless speak to an unethical character. And I could also talk about his racial issues, that is, race baiting, prejudice, and possibly racism. But I'll do that another time. Suffice to say, AIU sloths upon a mountain of unethical behaviour, but just like radical Islam, he is abound with apologetics and overflowing with lies. Do not believe him. So what is to be done about this cult? Well, allow me to explain what my attitude is and how I'm going to be dealing with them in future. There are two obvious options to start with. Either we ignore them, or we don't. Many are probably wondering why we don't just ignore them. Well, here's why. When he attained his pariah status, AIU became more extreme, more angry. He lost all his scruples as a sort of foreshadowing of now that he's losing all his marbles, although it wasn't a terribly impressive collection in the first place. Point is, whether it was our fault or not, this monster has been made, and whatever we do now, it's going to keep terrorizing innocent people. Now, given a lot of time, it may slow down, it may return to a more human state, but that could take years, and it may never happen. The majority of AIU's followers really appreciate that strength they see in him, rather like Donald Trump, actually. So he can't possibly get softer. He's in too deep now. It benefits him to continue being a psychotic cult leader. He's far too far down that rabbit's hole. The only conscionable option, in my opinion, is to oppose him in a strategic way. You may be wondering why I'm publishing my strategy. Won't he see this? Take advantage of it? I don't think he's that smart. I think he's locked into one path. He can't possibly change it now. It would do more damage to him for him to change his approach, even if it's intended to counter my strategy. And I'm not going to put every part of my strategy out there, just the important bits. So without further ado, here is my strategy against AIU. The overall goal here is to subdue AIU. This is the vague version of our goal. The nirvana state at the end of this conflict, i.e. the ideal situation, is that AIU maintains his content production, but is ethical, is honest. I'm fine with him being rude and provocative. What I'm not okay with is him damaging people's lives. And obviously I prefer that he drop the fallacious and irrational argumentation, and be able to admit when he's wrong. However, I think it's exceedingly unlikely that he'll ever reach this nirvana state. If you enjoy his content, I regret that my goal appears to be in opposition to that continued service. But it's just not worth the damage he's doing. Many people enjoy the comfort that the Catholic Church brings to them, but is it worth the systematic rape of children all around the world? No. And before you say it, yes, it's more extreme. It's an analogy. There will inevitably be backlash as AIU becomes more and more extreme and angry. Only those who are willing to endure this backlash should join the forefront of AIU opposition. Point 1. Maintain rational opposition from all sides. The pressure on its own isn't going to have an effect. In fact, on its own it may do more damage than good. AIU loves the counterculture he thinks he's building. The difference is made when the opposition is not just pressure, but is rational. You gotta hit him where he's wrong. My hypothesis is that combining his narcissism with the fact that his critics are actually right about him is causing an insurmountable denial within him. That's what's making him angry. Don't bother appealing to ethical norms, that'll just feed his counterculture narrative. Instead, I advise you appeal to exemplars, those figures he admires, who are mostly skeptical, rational atheists, like Sam Harris. Do you think Sam Harris would believe that AIU's actions are in pursuit of a peak on the moral landscape? Bringing totally unnecessary suffering to people who offer genuine criticism of him doesn't seem like the most efficient route to the best possible life for everyone. Insults against AIU and his fans, while sometimes fun, are totally worthless in the pursuit of this goal. Point 2. Take moral territory. AIU has become an advocate of many behaviors that most would consider unethical. This has happened because AIU wants to use certain unethical tools, like intimidation, such as doxing and extortion, etc., to silence his critics, but his critics call him out on it, oppose it, and so he has to oppose them. His narcissism prevents integration of the idea that his critics could be right about anything, especially related to him, so he's become, among other things, a doxing advocate. As we continue to condemn his unethical behavior, he'll continue to become more unethical, more self-confident in that unethical behavior, to the point that he'll alienate everyone. Point 3. Maintain ethical high ground. If we're fighting against unethical behavior, we can't use unethical behavior. Double standards are their domain, not ours. The perception from a wider audience that this is just an internet flame war doesn't help our cause, because it's far more than that. If we maintain the ethical high ground, it will help to assuage that misconception. Point 4. Remain civil when it's mutual among AIU's fans. There's no reason to be civil to the upper echelons of the cult, but his fans are a different matter. The number of defectors and dissenters is increasing. What I'm forecasting is already coming to pass. The cult's less extreme members are breaking away from it. Treat each person as an individual case. Dehumanization is also one of their domains. And maintain the truth. Always the truth, with as little embellishment as possible. Embellishment's not even necessary. The truth alone should convince any rational person. No lies, no propaganda. That's another one of their domains. Point 5. Direct engagement is not necessary, but may help. No one needs to actually talk to AIU to achieve this goal. Our criticism doesn't need to be directed at AIU specifically. It can be targeted at our audience, his opponents, who he's constantly watching. That said, I have no reason to turn down an invitation to talk with AIU under certain circumstances. I'm not afraid to defend my position, as I'm usually quite good with defending the truth. Engaging in flaming with his underlings isn't going to help anyone, except maybe them. The attitude to take, in my opinion, is, your king is in check, most of your pieces are gone. One lone pawn isn't of much interest to us. Now, if the analogy to make sense, we'd have to remove the pawn promotion rule, because let's face it, their pawns are always going to be pawns, even if not of them. We're only a few turns from checkmate now, and our side of the board is full of powerful pieces. Why the hell do I care so much? I'm a humanist, a humanitarian. I want to help people who are under unfair attack. Why do I care so much about petty internet drama? ISIS is more dangerous than AIU, right? Of course. But I can't do shit about ISIS. Neither can you, and neither can AIU. Don't you think all this attention you're giving him is just helping him? Evidence seems to suggest otherwise. Why would he be doxing and extorting his critics if his critics were helping him so much? At that point, you're essentially painting him as a mindless sadomasochist, an hypothesis I think is partially established by other evidence. And by the way, his subscriber count is irrelevant. The vast majority of these people wouldn't support him if they knew even one or two of the things he's done. And ask me again if I'm helping him when we succeed, and his hateful conglomeration is scattered to the winds. Vive la résistance! During this video, I've said "we" to refer to the main opposition group against AIU. Figured I'd take some time to clarify that. We're a fairly well-organized, unnamed group of like-minded people. There seems to be a massive overlap in the Venn diagram of people who oppose AIU and people who are just really nice. I've never been part of a more pleasant group of like-minded skeptics. That's not to say we're soft on issues either. I think all of us defy the definition of regressive left. We're a fairly disparate group, but we're mostly liberal atheists, and united in opposition against unethical behavior. If you want to join the group, all you need do is oppose unethical figures. We're more likely to notice you if that figure is AIU, especially if you associate with some of the group's more prominent members, on YouTube and Twitter primarily. I'll link a handy selection of them in the description. You can also interact on my website, oozlu.net, and this is bound to invite some attempts at espionage. That'll be fun. When the AIU drama is all over, my hope is that we can become a group with the aim of defending against unethical behaviour from all internet figures, because this happens a lot. AIU's nothing special. But hey, maybe you're the one that's got what it takes to be our next member. Just be an ethical skeptic and speak out against those who aren't. That's all we ever did. Here then is a man so bereft of testicular fortitude and wrought with insecurity as to be utterly incensed by the slightest criticism, such that he feels his only recourse is vicious and subversive retaliation aimed at censoring all dissent. An irrational, illiberal, narcissistic, psychopathic, pathological liar whose only value to society is to be poked with the fun stick. Well, don't you worry, Mr. Tracey. We've got the biggest, funnest sticks of them all, and there's no mercy until you ask us nicely.